She left him for a few minutes in the toy aisle, playing a video game display, while she walked a few feet away to look at lamps. When she came back, 6-year-old Adam Walsh was gone. 16 days later, 2 fishermen found his severed head in a drainage canal, more than 100 miles from the mall where he'd been playing. The rest of his body was never recovered. What followed was one of the most consequential failed investigations in American criminal justice history, and one father's transformation of unbearable grief into a body of federal law, a television program that helped catch hundreds of fugitives, and the very framework this channel exists within. This is Adam's story, and nearly every other episode in this series exists, in some way, downstream of it. This is Unsolved and Unforgotten. Tonight's case is the origin point for much of what you've heard referenced throughout this series: milk carton campaigns, national child safety legislation, and America's Most Wanted itself. Everything in this episode is drawn from police statements, court testimony, and verified reporting through 2026. Adam John Walsh was born on November the 14th, 1974, the only child of John and Reve Walsh. By the summer of 1981, he was 6 years old, living with his parents in Hollywood, Florida, a coastal city between Fort Lauderdale and Miami. On the afternoon of Monday, July the 27th, 1981, Reve Walsh took Adam with her on a shopping trip to the Hollywood Mall. Entering through a Sears department store located directly across the street from the Hollywood Police Department itself, a detail that would later strike investigators and the public alike as almost unbearably ironic, given how the investigation would unfold. Inside the Sears, Reve left Adam in the toy department, where he was playing a video game display alongside a small group of other children, while she walked a short distance away to look at lamp displays. She was gone only a few minutes. During that brief window, according to the investigation's later findings, a security guard at the store ordered the group of children, Adam among them, to leave the toy department, reportedly due to fighting among some of the older boys in the group. Adam, 6 years old and left without a parent nearby at the moment the group was dispersed, walked outside the store rather than waiting for his mother to find him. When Reve returned to the toy department, Adam was gone. She searched the store, then the mall, then contacted mall security and police. A search began that afternoon and expanded rapidly over the following hours and days, but produced no trace of Adam. For 16 days, Adam Walsh's whereabouts remained entirely unknown. John and Reve Walsh, alongside law enforcement and a large volunteer search effort, searched throughout South Florida, following any lead that emerged, without success. On August the 10th, 1981, 2 fishermen discovered a human head in a drainage canal alongside a highway in rural Indian River County, more than 100 miles north of Hollywood, near a community called Yeehaw Junction. It was identified as Adam's. The rest of his body was never recovered, despite extensive searching in the surrounding area in the years that followed. The cause of death was determined to be decapitation. Beyond that, due to the condition of the remains and the absence of the rest of his body, investigators were extremely limited in what additional forensic conclusions they could draw about exactly what had happened to Adam during the 16 days he was missing. What followed was, by the Walsh family's own repeated and public account over subsequent decades, one of the most poorly handled investigations of a major American criminal case in modern memory. The Hollywood Police Department did not request FBI assistance until roughly a week after Adam's disappearance, a delay that, in a case ultimately involving interstate movement of a suspect and victim, cost investigators access to resources and jurisdiction that might have been decisive earlier in the case. Perhaps most consequentially, investigators lost physical evidence critical to the case. Blood-stained carpeting recovered from a car belonging to their eventual prime suspect was misplaced, along with the vehicle itself, preventing any DNA testing of that evidence in the years that followed. Testing that, given how forensic DNA technology would later transform cold case investigations across the country, might have definitively resolved the case decades earlier than it was ultimately closed. John Walsh, in his 1997 book Tears of Rage, described the scope of these failures in blunt terms, calling the mistakes made in the investigation shocking, inexcusable, and heartbreaking. The Walsh family's public criticism of the Hollywood Police Department's handling of the case would remain a consistent thread across more than 2 decades of subsequent advocacy work. In October of 1983, more than 2 years after Adam's disappearance, a career criminal named Otis Elwood Toole then incarcerated on unrelated arson charges, confessed to an investigator that he had kidnapped a boy from a Florida mall in 1981 and killed him. Toole initially implicated a companion, fellow serial killer Henry Lee Lucas, in the crime, but investigators quickly established that Lucas had been incarcerated in Virginia at the time of Adam's abduction and could not have been involved. Toole then stated he had acted alone. According to his account, he had taken Adam from the mall in a white Cadillac and driven north, though he gave varying and inconsistent details across multiple interviews about exactly how he killed Adam and where he disposed of the remainder of his body. Toole would confess to and then recant his involvement in Adam's murder repeatedly over the following years, a pattern consistent with his behavior regarding numerous other killings he claimed responsibility for throughout his criminal history, many of which investigators eventually determined he had fabricated. Without physical evidence to corroborate his account, compounded by the earlier loss of the blood-stained carpeting from his car, Florida prosecutors concluded they did not have a case strong enough to formally charge Toole with Adam's murder. He was never charged or convicted for this specific crime. Toole died in a Florida prison on September the 15th, 1996, of liver failure related to cirrhosis and complications from AIDS, while serving a death sentence for an unrelated murder. He went to his grave never having been legally held responsible, one way or the other, for what happened to Adam. In the years following Toole's death, without a legal conviction ever having been secured, the case remained technically open, and several other names surfaced publicly in connection with it. Serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer, who was living in Florida at the time of Adam's abduction, was at one point considered and investigated as a possible alternative suspect, given his geographic proximity and history of violence, though no evidence was ever developed connecting him to Adam's murder specifically. Dahmer died in a Wisconsin prison in 1994, murdered by a fellow inmate without ever being charged in Adam's case. For years, John Walsh publicly maintained his own conviction that Toole was responsible, based in significant part on items found during a search of Toole's Jacksonville home. A pair of green shorts and a sandal that Walsh and investigators believed resembled clothing Adam had been wearing at the time of his abduction. It is difficult to overstate how directly Adam Walsh's case reshaped the landscape this channel operates within. Long before the case was ever formally resolved, John and Reve Walsh transformed their unimaginable loss into one of the most consequential advocacy careers in the history of American child safety policy. In 1984, John Walsh became a founding board member of the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, an organization that remains, to this day, the central clearinghouse referenced throughout virtually every other case covered on this channel. Florida, in direct response to Adam's case, became the first state in the country to establish a formal clearinghouse system for missing children cases. Adam's photograph became one of the earliest and most widely recognized images in the milk carton missing children campaigns that would come to define an entire era of American parenting anxiety. In 1988, John Walsh became the host of America's Most Wanted, a television program that would run for decades and become directly responsible for the identification, capture, or surrender of hundreds of wanted fugitives across the country. A program whose very existence traces back directly to the 16 days his own son was missing and the frustration he felt at how poorly that search had been handled. On July the 27th, 2006, the 25th anniversary of Adam's abduction, to the exact date, President George W. Bush signed the Adam Walsh Child Protection and Safety Act into federal law, a sweeping piece of legislation that expanded and strengthened the National Sex Offender Registry System, established new federal penalties for crimes against children, and created the Adam Walsh Child Protection and Safety Program to further coordinate resources across law enforcement agencies nationwide. On December the 16th, 2008, 27 years after Adam's disappearance, and 12 years after Toole's death, the Hollywood Police Department held a press conference to formally announce the closure of the case. Chief Chadwick Wagner told reporters that after an extensive review of the case file, investigators had concluded that all of the evidence pointed only to Otis Toole as Adam's killer. Investigators were careful, even in that announcement, to acknowledge the case's fundamental legal limitation. They had no DNA proof, given the evidence lost decades earlier, and Toole would never stand trial, having died 12 years before the announcement was made. Toole's own niece had separately told John Walsh that her uncle had confessed to killing Adam on his deathbed in prison, a detail Walsh cited as reinforcing his own long-held belief. Chief Wagner apologized directly to the Walsh family for the numerous investigative missteps made over the decades-long case. John Walsh, addressing reporters at the same press conference, said the announcement was not meant to look backward and assign blame, but simply to let the case rest after 27 years without a formal resolution of any kind. It bears stating plainly, given the legal complexity involved, Otis Toole was never charged, tried, or convicted for the murder of Adam Walsh. The Hollywood Police Department's 2008 announcement represents a formal investigative conclusion based on a review of the total case file, not a criminal conviction obtained through the American legal system. Retail stores across the country, including major national chains, adopted what became known as the Code Adam program in the years following his case, a rapid response protocol still in use today in thousands of stores nationwide, in which staff immediately lock all exits and begin a coordinated search the moment a child is reported missing inside a store. Precisely the kind of institutional response that did not exist in 1981. As of 2026, the case remains, in the Hollywood Police Department's own formal designation, closed but without any conviction ever having been obtained for Adam's murder specifically, a fact that remains part of the honest legal record of this case, even now. John Walsh has continued his advocacy and media work for more than 4 decades since Adam's death. Reve Walsh has remained a quieter, though consistent presence in that same advocacy work over the years. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, founded substantially because of Adam's case, continues to serve as the central coordinating body for nearly every missing child case still being actively investigated across the United States today. If Adam Walsh were alive today, he would be 51 years old. Adam Walsh was gone for only a few minutes before his mother returned to an empty toy department, and it would take 27 years, a string of investigative failures the Walsh family has never stopped naming publicly, and a suspect who died over a decade before the case was ever formally closed, for anyone to reach even the limited resolution this case has today. What makes Adam's case different from almost every other one covered on this channel is not the outcome his killer was never convicted, and much of the investigation was, by his own family's account, badly mishandled. What makes it different is the sheer scale of what his parents built afterward. An organization, a federal law, a television program, and a set of institutional safeguards that now quietly protect children in stores, schools, and communities across the entire country, most of whom will never know his name. If this episode helped you understand the case that shaped so much of what you've heard across this entire series, please like this video, leave a comment, and subscribe to Unsolved and Unforgotten for our next case. He is missing no longer. He is not forgotten.